In this lesson, we'll take some time to get you familiarized with some of the main areas of the Softimage interface. Okay, so let's actually just take a little bit of time to talk about some of the structure and some of the layout of these different menu items. So for example, we have the modeling section, which under here we have really a lot of the modeling related tools that we will ever need. So these are actually broken down into some very logical areas. So if we want to get an object, essentially just create an object from scratch, this is where we can find the tools and the parameters that are connected to that. If we actually want to build something, maybe from an existing object, we can actually start to create curves and other polygons. And again, we'll learn how all of these work in one of our later lessons as we start to get into some of our modeling related topics. Now, if we actually wanted to make adjustments or alterations to existing meshes and surfaces, this is where we actually find the tools found under the Modify section. And again, once we start to get into some of our modeling related topics, we'll learn just how all of these work and how these are all broken up. Now, this modeling section, or these sets of tools that we have here, are by no means the only tools that we have available in Softimage. We're only looking at the modeling related tools. So if I were to click on this model menu up here, we can actually switch this to something like animate or render, ice, simulate, and hair. So for example, if we switch this to animate, you'll notice that a couple of things happen. Number one, you'll see that a lot of the buttons over here have shifted and changed. There are still a few common buttons that still stay in place no matter which of these menus you're in. So for example, we still have things like get primitive, get material, and get property. But under here we have a lot of different tools that have now been listed out. These are again all animation related tools. The second thing you'll notice is that the colors in my interface have changed. We're now looking at something that is a little bit more of this mint green color, whereas before when we were in the modeling, everything had more of this purple color to it. Okay, so this is just a really quick and easy way of being able to very easily identify which sets of tools you're in. You'll notice that the rendering tools, once we're in that section, everything is now tinted a little bit more of a blue color. Now, if you look up here, you can also see that there is a keyboard shortcut associated with each one of these sets of menus. So if I were to press 1 on my keyboard, that sets us to model. If I press 2, that's animate. 3 takes us to render. 4 takes us to ice, and so on and so forth. Now, at any point in time, if we are in the modeling section, and let's say maybe we wanted to very quickly access some kind of an animation related tool. Well, we don't necessarily always have to jump back over here to the animate menu and find whatever we want. We actually have all of these different menus accessible at all times from this top area right up here. So all I need to do is just go down to animate, and you can see here's all my animation related tools, even though I'm still in the modeling section. So a couple of different ways that we are able to actually access some of these different tools within Softimage. Now you'll notice that a lot of these menus have this little dotted line up at the top. This means that this is actually a menu that could be ripped off and created as a free-floating window. So if at any point in time, if I have maybe a certain set of tools or maybe a certain set of menu items that I like to use very regularly, rather than having to continuously come in here and find that menu again, we can just come in here, tear that off, and now we have access to that at any time. And we can actually do this with more than just these modeling and other menu items over here. You'll notice that a lot of these other windows and pull-out menus also have the same ability. Okay, now in addition to being able to actually have all of our tools and things like that isolated over here, you notice on the opposite side of the screen, this is where we have a lot of our selection and modification related tools. So this is where we can actually start to type in scale, rotate, and translation coordinates. We can start to get into different selection types. Lots and lots of tools that are found here, and we'll get into these in a lot of detail in one of our later lessons of this course. But for now, just understand that this is where a lot of these different tools are going to be located. This is called the Main Command Panel, or the MCP, is really the overall name for this whole area. But down below here, we could switch this from the main command panel to something like the keying panel, which we'll get into in quite a bit more detail whenever we start to talk about animation and animation-related topics. We also have the property page panel. And again, we'll talk about all of these as we start to progress a little bit further through this training. Alright, now here's sort of a power user tip that you will actually find very, very useful as you start to work within Softimage, and that is the fact that Softimage actually remembers these sets of commands that you use anytime you click on a button. So for example, if I were to go to Get Primitive, and let's say we drop in a surface sphere. Okay, now Softimage actually remembered that path of commands that I have gone through, and it can actually recall those at any point in time. So for example, if I were to, let's say, just select this sphere and delete that for now, if I were to come up to any button that I have previously used and now just middle click on it, you can see Softimage actually remembers the exact command that was used within this, and this is something that applies for every single one of these buttons at any point in time. So again, if I have, let's say, a certain command in here that I use again and again and again, instead of having to come back here and continuously go find that, I could just use it once and then middle click to keep using that again. So if I were to, again, let's say just delete this sphere and now choose something a little bit different. We'll go with a polymesh. We'll do a cube. There we go. So now I have used that particular sequence of commands from this button. So now, again, if I were to delete that, and again, just middle click on this primitive button, now it remembers that last command, which was the creation of a polygon cube. Now, one last thing that I want to mention before we wrap up this lesson is the fact that Softimage actually has lots and lots of additional menus and other features that may not always be immediately accessible from this main interface. So for example, what I really want you to be aware of is the fact that pretty much every single place in the interface where you see these little arrows and these little triangles connected to either a button or a menu item, that means that there are other options and other things contained within that particular area. So you can see that little tick shows up in the corner of every single one of our buttons that has some kind of a expansion or a menu that is connected to that. Again, in the interface items or the viewports, you can see that we have, again, clicking on these little icons, we can start to fly out little menus. Same thing up here, as we start to click on these, we can start to expand that and have access to lots of additional tools. And even up in these little select, transform, and other areas, again, if we were to left click on those, we can start to pull these out and have additional options that can really expand the functionality that we just normally might not have or may be very difficult to have access to otherwise. So as you start to go through the interface and you start to familiarize yourself with it, really look for any kind of a button that has these little arrows or these little ticks on them. Again, pretty much any little button that you see that on, that means that that button can be expanded and you can have additional menu items and other options that can be found within that.